Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor, and this is the latest instalment in our series of blogs on awareness and mindfulness. Today I was asked to do a blog on how to practically live mindfully and what it takes to be able to have that as a constant experience. So I thought I would spend some time explaining exactly how EAP relates to mindfulness. Now, there's a lot of different ways in which people explain mindfulness, and EAP has its own unique way of giving a rationale for what mindfulness is. Basically stated, we explain mindfulness as remembering in any moment that you have a choice. A choice between your habitual way of doing life with its associated outcomes, or that there's an alternative with outcomes that are much more serving and loving to you. And so mindfulness is really coming to this place in a moment where you can either choose to function out of habit, or you can choose to align with a new set of behaviours and attitudes and beliefs and expectations or hopes, if you want to call them, that potentially result in a much better outcome for you personally and for others. The key in stating what mindfulness is that mindfulness is the remembering that you have a choice. It's actually not actually making a choice. And in a minute I'm going to explain where the power really exists in that recollection in any moment that you actually have a choice. So in this place of being able to have a choice, it requires an alternative. And so that's what we call becoming aware. And the EAP stands for Enhances Awareness Program. The reason that awareness is so important is that you have to be more informed. You have to have more information, which is what awareness is, in order to be able to be in the position to have a choice. So without having knowledge of a more serving way or a more loving way of approaching whatever the issue might be that you're dealing with, or just life in general, without having an idea of what that might look like and how you could achieve that, there is no choice, which means that you can only continue to live your life habitually, which means that you're always going to get what you've always got because you keep on doing one way or another the same things. And sometimes we make radical changes, we move home, or we change partners, or we change jobs, thinking that we're going to create a new experience because we've made a change. But what we find out happens is that our own fears, our own expectations continue to be fed, and we can only create what it is that we've always created, which means that we may be living in a new home, but we still end up experiencing the same sorts of things that we were experiencing in our previous place. Or we may have a new partner and here's somebody turn up with a whole different look, but they still end up acting out in a way that, once again, meets our fears and expectations in just the same way that the last partner did. So what happens is that you can't change a movie by changing the screen, so as to speak. So mindfulness is where you come to the point of having a choice about how you're going to behave, think, or feel, and you take a moment to recognize that you have a choice about how you act, think, or feel in this moment, and that there is a more serving, loving way. And this is the expanded awareness that you've developed. Now, developing that awareness doesn't come easy. It actually takes work. You've got to go and do some research. You need to go and speak to people who are demonstrating an approach to life that you'd like to emulate, or that you'd like to copy, or maybe there's a line of thought that you could look up on Google in terms of finding out more information, or there could be videos on YouTube, or there might be books that you could be led to, or in researching that you might be inspired to pick up and read. So in other words, effort is going to be required to become more informed, which ultimately is becoming more aware. The key to the alternative is the whole notion that whatever the choice is that I'm now making, which is different to my habitual way of doing things, is that it's going to be more serving for me and for others. It's going to be more loving for me. It's going to help improve my health and well-being. It's going to give me more peace of mind and clarity. There's going to be a greater sense of joy in my relationships. So in other words, what we're researching, what we're becoming more aware of, is a more loving and a more serving way of being able to engage and live life, which is the alternative that allows mindfulness to exist by virtue of the fact that you, having an alternative, now have a choice. Remember though, that this isn't asking you to make the choice. In fact, in the early stages of mindfulness, what happens is you will continue to function in your habitual way because you've got a very, very strongly programmed neural pathway. A neural pathway is a set of neurons within the brain that have been established to accommodate your habit. And of course, in the article, I talk about the fact that there's a lot of research suggesting that 95% of what we do is subconscious. In other words, we have these neural pathways in our brain that are so well worn down that we just can move through them very easily. I can remember having the opportunity to visit Agentio, which was one of the old cities in Sicily, in Western Sicily, and coming into the compound through gates were these roads that were made out of sandstone that were just part of the natural sandstone. But here were ruts in these sandstone roads that were like a foot deep, and these ruts had been created by the wheels of wagons that had come through these gates over hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, and had worn down this sandstone into these very, very deep ruts. And so our mind's a bit the same way, in that we have these processes of behaviour that have become habit, that we function with subconsciously in order to live life. And 95% of the time, that's what we're doing. Now, the 5%, as I talk about, I think I talk about it in the article, is represented by when the route that we, for example, would normally take to work, there's been a closure because of an accident, or water mains burst or something, which means we have to find an alternative. At that point, we're no longer functioning habitually. At that point, we've now got to become creative. We've now got to start becoming present and functioning through decision-making, either based on GPS or knowledge that we have, in order to create an alternative route to get to our destination. So what we're about is this place of becoming mindful. So how does mindfulness create change? Well, what happens is when you create this alternative, what you're doing is laying down a neural pathway for a new way of being able to function effectively habitually, but in habitual way that is more serving to you and to those around you, and it's limited habitual behaviour. So that what happens is every time you stop and remember that you have a choice, you're actually building this new neural pathway. A good friend of mine alluded to the notion of walking through a field with long grass, and each time you walk through the field in the same route, the grass gets pressed down and the passageway through the field of long grass becomes clearer and clearer until it's really well worn. And this is what mindfulness is doing. Every time you remember that you have a choice, you're reinforcing this alternative, this new neural pathway, and there's a point at which, having given, and it may be not 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times, but maybe 10,000 times of having stopped and remembering that you have this choice and you feed the alternative, it develops such clarity and strength within the neural pathways of your mind that the capacity to engage that behaviour becomes almost automatic, almost as automatic as your habitual behaviour. And there'll be a point where you'll say, do you know what? It's so clear and so easy to me now, I think I'm going to do that today. Now, the key here is that there's no discipline required to make that choice. There's no personal will of any significant consequence that's required to choose to go down that neural pathway, because you've imagined it every time you've stopped and remembered that you've had a choice, which is being mindful. You've actually created this route that you're now able to take with ease. The key to mindfulness is that you're building the alternative to become a very real neural pathway within the context of your brain, so that it becomes an easy option for you to be able to follow. The key to mindfulness is this alternative, and of course, to have an alternative, you've got to create it, and that's where awareness comes in. Awareness is becoming informed enough to have an alternative way of behaving that's more loving and serving to you. So that's the real nuts and bolts of mindfulness, awareness, and neural pathway development as it relates to the Enhances Awareness program. Hey, I hope you find that's of benefit to you in terms of better understanding how to approach change through being more mindful. We're going to continue to have supporting posts like this one and blogs that we'll be putting up for you to better understand this principle and to be able to incorporate it into your life so as to create opportunities for you to live life with a greater sense of inner peace and stillness, and to be able to turn up in the world with more compassion and benevolence in terms of how you relate to other people and how you relate to the planet. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen, and look out for our next blog in the next couple of weeks. And if you want to know more about the Enhances Awareness Program and EAP Mentor, go to Facebook at EAP Mentor, and you'll be able to find our Facebook page where we have lots of fantastic things there on a weekly basis, on a daily basis in fact. And to find out more about EAP, go to our website eapmentor.com, and please, if you have any questions, use the contacts on both of those places to speak to one of our mentors or to anyone at EAP head office, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Anyway, looking forward to speaking to you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.